When one observes the external world, it's easy to notice how speech influences others. A kind word softens the heart. A harsh tone can cut deeper than a blade. But rarely does one pause to recognize that the most consistent, most impactful dialogue is not the one spoken aloud. It is the one that echoes silently within. The words you say to yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously, shape the trajectory of your thoughts, your energy, your behavior, and eventually your life. This is not philosophy, it is mechanics. It is cause and effect. Each time you declare internally, I can't, or I'm not enough, you activate a system of limitation. Your body responds to this inner command with decreased energy. Your decisions become cautious. You seek smaller outcomes. You interpret resistance as proof of your inadequacy. Why? Because the mind obeys the instructions it is given, and your instructions are written in language. Language is not merely description. It is programming. And your self-talk is the code. Now, consider this: if you speak to yourself with constant negativity, cynicism, and self-doubt, your body will begin to carry those words like a weight. They will become a posture, a pattern, a presence. You will walk into rooms as though you are not meant to be there. You will speak to others with hesitation. You will pursue opportunities with hesitation, or not at all. The tragedy is not that the world has rejected you. It is that you rejected yourself long before the world had a chance to meet you. Inner language does not only define who you are in this moment, it also defines the range of what you believe is possible. For example, someone who constantly thinks, I'm not ready, will never act boldly. Someone who repeats internally, I always mess things up, will unconsciously look for situations that confirm this identity. Because the mind, when left unguided, seeks to make its language real. It wants coherence, even if it costs you your growth. This is why monks are trained first not in movement, but in silence. Not in action, but in awareness. Because until you become aware of the language within, you are ruled by it, you are not living, you are repeating. Each person carries a narrative, a personal script, often formed unconsciously during childhood, experience, failure, or trauma. These stories linger not because they are true, but because they are familiar, and the mind, being a creature of habit, prefers familiarity over truth. So a woman may say to herself, quietly, without anyone hearing, I am too emotional, or I am not strong enough, or I should just stay quiet. And though no one corrects her, though no one disagrees, those phrases become bars around her potential. You must understand that thought is not neutral. Thought carries weight. Repetition makes it dense. When you say something often enough, even in secret, your nervous system responds. Your habits respond. Your perception of yourself becomes rooted in it. Now, imagine the opposite. What happens when you change the inner language? Not once. Not as a mantra that you repeat in the morning only to forget by noon, but with seriousness, with clarity, with consistency. When a person begins to speak to themselves with words of courage, I am learning. I am worthy of this challenge. I may not know how yet, but I will find a way. Everything begins to shift, not because the world has changed, but because the internal energy they carry into the world has changed. That energy influences posture. Posture influences presence. Presence influences how others respond to you and how you respond to yourself. There is a principle. The inner world creates the outer world. The thoughts you cultivate inside become the lens through which you view life, and the filter through which life views you. Inner language is not only for motivation. It is not a luxury. It is structure. Just as the foundation of a building determines how tall it can rise, the structure of your self-talk determines how far you can stretch into possibility. If your internal voice is built on criticism, judgment, doubt, and fear, you will hesitate to rise. You will self-sabotage. You will prepare for defeat while calling it realism. But if your internal voice is built on clarity, discipline, strength, and compassion, you will rise with more balance. You will not only take action, you will take the right kind of action from a place of inner conviction. Most people want change, they want freedom, they want growth. But they forget that transformation is not something that begins outside of them. It begins with the language they use when no one is listening. It begins with the moment they stop speaking to themselves as an enemy and start speaking as an ally. Because the way you speak to yourself is the way you treat yourself. And the way you treat yourself is the way your life will unfold. There is a widespread illusion in the modern world one that quietly governs the way people seek meaning and define themselves. It is the belief that identity is something hidden, a treasure to be discovered, a truth to be stumbled upon in the distant corners of the world or in some future version of life. From this belief, many begin a journey outward. They believe that if they travel far enough, read enough, achieve enough, or are validated enough by others, they will finally find themselves. But this search can stretch on for years, decades, a lifetime, because the self is not something waiting behind a curtain or buried under years of experience. It is not an ancient relic waiting to be dusted off. Identity is not found. It is built moment by moment, choice by choice, with the quiet discipline of one who is awake to their own becoming. To believe that identity is found is to assume it is fixed, static, predetermined, and separate from effort. But if you observe nature, you will see that nothing alive is fixed. A tree does not find itself, it grows. It adapts to sunlight, to wind, to the pull of gravity. A river does not find its purpose. It carves one over time through force, pressure, persistence. In the same way, identity is not something we wait to reveal. It is something we shape with the tools of intention and discipline. From a young age, most people are handed labels. Some are subtle, quiet, helpful, difficult. Others are spoken aloud and repeated often until they become internalized scripts. A girl who is told she's too sensitive may begin to see her emotions as weakness. A boy who is told he's not leadership material may begin to silence his instincts. These labels are not identity, but if left unexamined, they become the foundation of one. What happens then is not a life of authenticity, but a life of adaptation, one shaped to fit the opinions of others rather than the truth of the self. People begin to live out stories that were written by others, believing them to be their own. They follow the career they were told would be safe. They pursue the relationship that makes sense. They mute their creativity to appear more stable. All the while, they say they are searching for their identity, not realizing they have handed it away in small pieces, day after day. To create identity is to take it back, to recognize that every word, every thought, every habit becomes a brick in the structure of the self. You do not become confident by waiting to feel confident. You become confident by acting with courage repeatedly until it becomes your nature. You do not become disciplined by hoping for motivation. You become disciplined by honoring small promises to yourself until consistency replaces struggle. Identity is the sum of these micro movements, invisible to the world at first, but slowly solidifying into who you are. Even in stillness, you are not the same from one moment to the next. The cells in your body are regenerating. Your perceptions are shifting. Your beliefs are evolving if you let them. So why cling to the idea that identity is a fixed destination? There is no moment in the future when you will arrive and be complete. There is only the present and your willingness to shape it deliberately. When a martial artist enters the training hall, they do not say, "I will train until I find myself." They say, "I will train to become." Each repetition, each correction, each moment of failure and realignment is part of the creation. They are not searching for who they are. They are constructing it through movement, breath, and presence. In the same way, identity is not about finding the right answer. It is about embodying the right intention. This intention must be rooted in awareness. You cannot create identity by blindly imitating others or by chasing images you see on screens. You must sit with yourself in quiet. You must ask questions that disturb you. You must be willing to see your contradictions without judgment. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when I fail? Who am I when I am not trying to please, impress, or conform? The answers are not final, but they are fertile ground. From them, something authentic can be built. And creation is not always beautiful at first. It is uncomfortable. It requires shedding the old to make room for the new. Just as a snake must shed its skin, identity too must be released and renewed. This is why those who cling to old identities suffer, because the self they are holding on to no longer fits who they are becoming. To create identity is not to be perfect. It is to be intentional. It is to look at your life and ask, what kind of person do I want to be? Not just in my imagination, but in my daily actions. Then begin acting like that person now, not later. Speak their words, practice their posture, think their thoughts, face discomfort the way they would, and repeat this again and again until what was once artificial becomes authentic. Most people think identity is a name, a role, a personality trait. But identity is deeper than that. It is rhythm. It is energy. It is the alignment between your inner world and your outer behavior. It is the harmony between what you know to be true and what you are willing to live as truth. And every time you act from that alignment, no matter how small the act, you are no longer searching. You are sculpting. There is a voice that speaks even when no one is speaking. It lives in the background of your thoughts, behind your eyes, beneath your breath. It is the voice that comments on everything you do, everything you say, and everything you are. You don't have to call upon it. It's already there. It doesn't wait to be invited. It arrives before you even begin. This is the inner critic. For most, it has been present since early childhood. Sometimes it sounds like a parent, sometimes like a teacher, sometimes like society itself. But its real power lies not in what it says, but in how closely it speaks to your sense of self. It doesn't say, that action was wrong. It says, you are wrong. It doesn't say, you failed at this. It says, you are a failure. The inner critic speaks in absolutes, in judgments, in finalities, and its language is designed to stop movement. Its goal is not clarity, it is control. It wants to keep you small, because in smallness there is safety. In hesitation, there is familiarity. In paralysis, there is no risk of pain. The inner critic is not evil. It is afraid. It was built to protect you from shame, from disappointment, from being seen and judged by others. But over time, it becomes the thing it was trying to protect you from. It becomes the source of your own suffering. You do not need to obey the inner critic. But first, you must recognize its voice. It will not always shout. It often whispers. It shows up in moments of silence, in decision making, in reflection. You try something new and it says, why even try? You'll fail like last time. You speak your truth and it says, you sounded stupid. You rest and it says, you're being lazy. It cloaks itself in logic. In realism, it uses the language of concern, but beneath it is fear disguised as intelligence. The first step is to bring attention, not to argue, not to fight, simply to observe, is this voice helping me grow, or is it keeping me from trying? In the space between the critic's words and your awareness lies the opportunity for something else to emerge, a voice not rooted in fear or judgment, but in clarity and compassion. This is the inner guide. Unlike the critic, the inner guide does not speak in absolutes, it does not insult, it does not command, it observes, reflects, and asks. It is not loud, but it is steady. You may only hear it when you are quiet enough to listen. The inner guide says, you made a mistake, yes? But what did you learn? It says, you're afraid, let's understand why, and still move forward. It says, you are enough even while growing. The guide does not flatter you. It does not feed the ego. It invites you to be honest without shame, courageous without recklessness, and kind without weakness. Silencing the critic does not mean pretending it doesn't exist. It means withdrawing your allegiance from it. It means no longer taking it as the ultimate authority on your worth. The critic will speak. Let it. But do not accept its words as truth. You can hear a voice without believing it. You can notice a thought without obeying it. To awaken the guide, you must create space. The mind that is always reacting cannot reflect. The heart that is always defensive cannot discern. This is why stillness is essential. Not stillness as inactivity, but stillness as presence. Sit, breathe. Do not chase thoughts. Watch them pass. Notice which ones come from the critic. Notice their tone, their urgency, their tension. Then ask quietly, what would my guide say instead? This is not easy, especially if the critic has been dominant for years. It has rehearsed its lines. It knows your insecurities. It knows exactly when to strike when you're tired, uncertain, vulnerable. But just as a path becomes clear only after many steps have been taken, so too does the voice of the guide grow stronger with practice. It may begin with a whisper. One small voice saying, you're doing your best. Then another, you've been here before, you can move through this again. Over time, the inner guide becomes not just a voice, but a presence. A teacher that walks with you. A mirror that shows not only your flaws, but your potential. A friend that stays when things are quiet. Do not confuse the guide for comfort. It will still challenge you, but it will challenge you from a place of belief, not doubt. It will not ask, what's wrong with you? It will ask, what do you need to grow? It will not say, you're not enough. It will say, you've come far, and there's more waiting. You begin to live differently when the inner guide leads. You stop trying to be perfect. You stop trying to be present. You stop shrinking. You begin expanding. You stop punishing yourself for being human. You begin honoring yourself for choosing to keep going. Each day offers moments to shift. Each thought is an opportunity to decide, will I speak to myself as an enemy or as an ally? Will I add more noise or more wisdom? Will I continue the old script or allow a new one to begin? The critic thrives on noise, on autopilot, on patterns you never question. But the guide appears when you slow down, when you look inwards with attention, when you stop trying to prove yourself and start trying to know yourself. It does not arrive through force, but through invitation, through silence, through the willingness to meet yourself, not as a problem to fix, but as a mystery to explore. Many people wait for confidence before they begin. They wait for the feeling of certainty, of strength, of assurance to appear within them as a sign that it is time to act. But confidence does not arrive as a gift. It is not granted to the lucky. It does not fall from the sky into the hearts of those who wait long enough. Confidence is not something you receive. It is something you build. And what builds it, brick by brick, is consistency. The mind does not believe in what it hears only once. It does not trust promises spoken in passing. It does not gain strength from temporary bursts of motivation. The mind watches. It remembers. It learns from repetition. It learns from patterns. It learns from what you do, not occasionally, but consistently. This is why discipline is often quiet. It does not need to announce itself. It does not chase applause. It focuses on repetition. It returns day after day to the same practice, the same intention, the same standard, not because it is easy, but because something within understands that real transformation is not born from intensity, but from rhythm. You don't become confident in your voice by speaking once. You become confident by speaking even when your voice shakes. Again and again. You don't become confident in your physical body by training for a week and stopping. You build strength through showing up, through repetitions that no one sees, through sweat that earns no recognition. Each time you do the thing you committed to, even when it's inconvenient, even when the results aren't immediate, you make a deposit into the account of your self-belief. It is the act of honoring your own word repeatedly that teaches your mind to trust you. And trust is the soil where confidence grows. Consider the tree that stands tall in a storm. It does not reach that height overnight. Its roots grew deep long before its branches reached wide. Those roots were not formed in one day of rain or one day of sun. They were formed in seasons, in rhythm, in patience, in repetition. And so it is with inner strength. Confidence is not loud at first. It does not appear with fireworks or applause. In the beginning, it is subtle. You begin to notice that your steps are a little more sure. Your words carry a little more weight. Your choices are made with a little more clarity. Not because everything is perfect, but because you have begun to recognize a simple truth: you can rely on yourself. The world is full of people who start and stop, who chase the feeling, not the form. But feelings are fleeting. One day you feel motivated. The next day you don't. One week you are inspired. The next you are lost in doubt. If you only act when you feel like it, your path will be unstable. But if you act because it is aligned with your principles, your mission, your inner code, then each act becomes a layer of stability. And over time, those layers become a foundation. The most confident people are not the ones with the loudest voices. They are the ones whose actions are steady, reliable, rooted. They are not moved by praise or shaken by criticism. Because their confidence does not depend on what others see. It depends on what they do when no one is watching. Consistency is also a form of self-respect. When you do what you said you would do, especially when it is difficult, you are sending a message to your mind: I am someone who can be counted on. I am not defined by my moods. I am not ruled by my fears. I am guided by something deeper, by intention, by commitment, by presence. Confidence does not come from always being right. It comes from being resilient, from knowing that even if you fall, you will rise. Even if you fail, you will learn. Even if you are tired, you will return. And it is the habit of returning, of showing up again and again, that builds the quiet certainty that cannot be faked. Many seek shortcuts. They look for hacks, for inspiration, for quick solutions. But consistency asks something else of you. It asks for presence when motivation is gone. It asks for movement when results are invisible. It asks for focus in the midst of chaos. And when you offer those things day after day, not perfectly but persistently, you begin to notice something changing, not just in your outcomes, but in your posture, your tone, your breath. Confidence does not begin with applause, it begins with repetition. And repetition requires stillness of mind, clarity of purpose, and reverence for the small steps. Not grand gestures, not perfection, just small steps repeated with care. Confidence forms when you show up again after a failure, when you stay committed after a setback, when you get up and practice even when no one notices, when you honor the small daily rituals that shape your energy, your thinking, your presence. These moments, often dismissed by others as insignificant, are the very moments where confidence is created. It is easy to believe that those who are confident were born that way. But no one is born fluent in strength. It is learned. It is earned. It is rehearsed in silence and tested in discomfort. The muscle of confidence grows like every other muscle, through tension, through resistance, through repetition. Not once, not when convenient, but consistently. Long before a word is spoken, before a single breath carries thought into sound, there is already a dialogue taking place. Not between you and others, but between you and yourself. It is not always loud. It does not need to be. Even in silence, the mind is listening. And more importantly, it is responding. You may think you are silent when you do not speak, but silence is never empty. Within that stillness, your thoughts are still forming, your beliefs are still echoing, your self-talk is still unfolding. The absence of speech does not mean the absence of influence. You may sit quietly in a room, appearing calm to the world outside, while inside a storm of criticism, fear, doubt, or distraction moves without resistance. And the mind, always present, always sensitive, absorbs it all. It takes what is whispered within and begins to shape your perception, your emotional state, your physiology, the way you breathe, the way you hold your body, the way you react to life. All are affected not just by what is said aloud, but by what is repeated in the silence of your own thoughts. This is why your inner world must be watched with the same attention that a monk gives to his breath during meditation. Because even when you are not consciously directing your mind, it is still being shaped. Even when no one is listening, your mind is. Even when no one is around to judge you, your mind is forming judgments. And these judgments do not vanish just because they are not spoken. They take root. Consider how quickly your body reacts to a silent thought. A single memory can cause your pulse to rise. An imagined failure can trigger anxiety. You may not say anything aloud, but your mind has already reacted. It has already prepared the body to respond as if the threat is real. In this way, silence is not passive. It is active. It is a space where your thoughts carry tremendous power. There is a tendency to believe that the spoken word carries more weight than thought. And in some contexts, it does. But the mind does not wait for sound to begin forming beliefs. It starts with repetition. Whatever is thought most often becomes familiar, and whatever is familiar becomes truth, not objective truth, but personal reality. If you tell yourself quietly, day after day, that you are not good enough, that you are behind, that you are a burden, that you are stuck, even if no one hears it, your mind does. And it begins to adjust your emotional state, your decisions, your reactions, and your expectations to match those statements. You begin to act in accordance with the unspoken, and soon, your outer world begins to reflect it. But the opposite is also true. If in your silence you practice presence, if you allow space between thought and reaction, if you cultivate awareness rather than passivity, the silence becomes strength. You begin to shape your mind instead of being shaped by it. You start to notice the thoughts that do not serve you, and instead of obeying them, you observe them. This is the beginning of choice. Choice does not come in the loud moments. It comes in the quiet ones, in the space between the stimulus and the response. The disciplined mind is not one that has no negative thoughts. It is one that has trained itself to notice them without immediately reacting. It has learned to pause, to breathe, to question, to decide. The way to influence the silent dialogue is not to fight it with noise. It is to anchor your awareness. Not every thought deserves your belief. Not every emotion deserves your reaction. The mind is a vast space. It can produce both clarity and confusion, insight and illusion, peace and chaos. What determines what grows is where your attention goes. Even in silence, your body is listening to your thoughts. Stand in front of a mirror and think, I look tired, I look weak, I'm not enough. Your posture will change. Your shoulders will fall. Your energy will shrink. Now stand in the same place and think, I am here. I am breathing. I am learning. And observe what happens to your breath, your spine, your presence. The shift is not imaginary. It is real. The body does not wait for evidence. It responds to intention. This is why environments of silence, like nature, meditation, solitude, are not empty. They are amplifiers. They remove external noise so you can hear what's really happening inside. And often when people enter silence, they are disturbed. Not because silence is uncomfortable, but because the internal noise has been masked for so long that its return feels overwhelming. But this is not a problem. It is an invitation. It is the beginning of seeing clearly. To become aware of your silent communication is to begin reclaiming authority over your own mind. You no longer operate on default. You begin to direct. You begin to choose what you feed, what you affirm, what you allow to repeat. The inner guide does not always speak in words. Sometimes it is a shift in energy, a sense of knowing, a feeling that arises in the stillness. If the critic is loud and repetitive, the guide is quiet but steady. And it can only be heard when you make space to listen. The mind is not separate from your life. It is the architect of it. And that architecture is not built with external materials. It is constructed with thought, with belief, with the words that pass through your mind even when your lips remain still. So you must begin to treat your inner silence not as a void, but as a vessel. What fills it is up to you. You can pour into it fear, doubt, repetition of old pain, and that will shape the structure of your experience. Or you can begin to fill it with intention, with presence, with the kind of thoughts that build rather than break, that heal rather than hurt, that open rather than close. Because even when no one else hears you, even when no sound is spoken, your mind listens, and it listens completely. In a world that constantly urges forward motion, that celebrates the hustle, that rewards speed and production, it becomes easy to believe that achievement is the highest goal. That success, status, accumulation, recognition. These are the ultimate measures of a life well lived. But there is a quiet truth that many ignore until much later. You can achieve much and still be lost. You can reach the summit and feel no peace. You can fill your life with victories and feel a deep sense of misalignment within. Achievement is visible. It's quantifiable. It gives the illusion of clarity. You crossed the finish line. You won the award. You got the job. You made the money. The world claps. And yet, in the silence after the applause fades, something inside may remain unsettled. Not because the achievement was wrong, but because it did not come from alignment. Alignment is quieter. It is internal. It cannot be measured by others. It is the felt sense that your actions are in harmony with your values, your words are rooted in truth, and your direction is guided by clarity rather than reaction. Alignment is when your inner world supports your outer actions. And unlike achievement, alignment cannot be faked. You can act your way into success, but you cannot act your way into peace. Peace comes when the movement of your life matches the rhythm of your soul. This does not mean ease. This does not mean comfort. It means that your efforts are honest, that your energy is not being spent wearing a mask, that what you do is not simply an escape from who you are, but an expression of it. Many people chase goals because they think the goal will finally make them feel whole. They say, once I accomplish this, then I will rest. Once I get this, then I will feel enough. But what they are really saying is, I am out of alignment now, and I am using achievement as a way to avoid sitting with that discomfort. This path does not heal, it postpones. And whatever is postponed returns, usually louder. Alignment is about presence. It is not about a distant result. It is about how you feel in the doing, not just what you get from the doing. If you wake up each day and force yourself through actions that deplete you, if your mind must constantly justify a path that your body resists, if your heart is closed while your schedule is full, you are not aligned, no matter how efficient or successful you appear to be. This is why so many people burn out not just from overwork, but from misaligned work. The body tires more quickly when the soul is not on board. You may not always notice it at first. You may even be energized for a while by the adrenaline of progress. But over time, the cost shows up in restlessness, in distraction, in low-grade resentment, in that quiet voice that asks, is this really it? True power comes not from doing more, but from doing what is aligned with who you are. Not who you were told to be, not who you are trying to prove yourself to be. but who you are when all roles are stripped away, when there is no audience to impress, when you are alone with your own breath. From that place, when you act, the action carries a different energy. It doesn't just move the world, it nourishes you in the process. Alignment is not static. It requires attention. You may be aligned today and drift tomorrow. That is not failure. That is reality. This is why self-reflection is not optional. It is necessary. You must check in, not once, but regularly. You must ask, are my actions coming from clarity or from fear? Am I doing this because it's true or because it's expected? Do I feel grounded? Or am I performing a role that no longer fits? You can achieve great things from a place of misalignment, but the cost is always internal. You may reach the peak, but feel empty. You may win, but feel numb. You may be praised, but feel disconnected from the one being praised, because deep down you know you are playing a role crafted for success rather than built from truth. Alignment, on the other hand, is a quiet power. It does not always bring immediate recognition. It may even look like less from the outside, less noise, less hustle, fewer dramatic milestones, but what it offers is depth, integrity, wholeness. When your values and your actions are in harmony, you move through life not just achieving, but becoming. The difficulty is that the world rarely teaches this. The systems are designed to reward productivity over presence, outcomes over inner balance, and image over substance. So to live in alignment is to live deliberately, to slow down where others rush, to listen where others speak, to choose meaning over momentum, to choose inner peace over outer pressure. This does not mean you stop achieving. It means your achievements come from a deeper place, a place not motivated by lack or insecurity, but by purpose and clarity, a place where you no longer need to chase validation because you are already walking in truth. It is not always easy to live this way. It requires courage to say no when yes is expected. It requires solitude to hear your real voice beneath the noise of others. It requires patience to let go of shallow goals and wait for the right ones to arise from within. It requires honesty, the kind that is not afraid to let go of impressive lives that are secretly misaligned. You begin to feel the difference in your body. When you are aligned, there is a sense of lightness, of clarity, of grounded momentum, the kind that doesn't rush but also doesn't hesitate. It moves with trust, because it's not being pushed by fear or pulled by illusion. It's moved by the quiet conviction that this path, this step, this expression is true